The Galactic Council chamber held 463 species. Every one of them had come to watch the newcomers beg. Ambassador Kalen of the Vorth pressed his upper hands against the polished stone of his delegation's podium. His species had held council membership for 12,000 cycles. He had personally witnessed 37 species ascend to full status. He had never seen an admission like this. Species designation, human, he announced, his voice resonating through the translation arrays. Homeworld classification, 12. The chamber stirred. Classification 12 meant death. It meant gravity that crushed lesser species. It meant radiation that cooked organic tissue within hours. It meant weather systems that could strip mountains to flatlands in a single season. Only 4 species in galactic history had ever emerged from Class 12 worlds. All 4 had gone extinct within 500 cycles of achieving spaceflight. Kalen continued reading. Atmospheric composition, nitrogen-oxygen with trace elements. Surface gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared. Tectonic activity, extreme. Native predators, documented at 47,000 species, of which 312 are classified as capable of consuming sentient life. A delegate from the Aquatic Meridian Collective made a sound that translated as wet disgust. They evolved alongside creatures that eat thinking beings. According to their records, Kalen said, several of these predators actively hunted their direct evolutionary ancestors for millions of years. The chamber erupted, not with alarm, with laughter. Kalen watched the humans at their delegation table. There were 5 of them dressed in simple dark suits, their faces showing nothing. The lead human, a female with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much, kept her hands folded on the table. She didn't react to the laughter. Neither did her companions. This was the part Kalen had come to witness, the ritual humiliation of a new species. Every junior member went through it. The old powers laughed at their primitive technology, their barbaric histories, their desperate climb from the mud. Most species showed anger. Some showed fear. A few showed pathetic eagerness to please, promising trade deals and military alliances to anyone who would stop mocking them. The humans showed nothing at all. The Vorth acknowledged the human application for full council membership, Kalen said. We note that humans have achieved faster-than-light travel and colonized 12 worlds beyond their home system. We note that they have established diplomatic contact with 73 species. We note that they have requested access to council military records regarding the border regions. The laughter faded. The border regions were contested space, dangerous space. No junior species had ever been stupid enough to ask about military matters there. Kalen spread his lower hands in the gesture of offering. The Council recognizes that humans wish to contribute to galactic security. However, the Vorth must point out that human military technology is limited. He didn't need to add the rest. Everyone in the chamber knew it. Human weapons were projectile-based. Their ships used fusion drives that were centuries behind Council standards. Their soldiers still used organic bodies instead of neural-linked war frames. They were children playing with stones while the galaxy wielded lightning. The Meridian delegate spoke again. Perhaps humans could serve as ground forces in low-gravity environments. Their high-gravity physiology might prove useful for carrying equipment. More laughter. Kalen saw the human woman's jaw tighten, just for a moment. Then her face smoothed back to stillness. The council president, an ancient being from the Jorlak hive, raised a segmented limb for silence. The application is noted. Humanity is granted provisional membership with all associated restrictions. Access to military records is denied. Access to restricted space is denied. Access to precursor research is denied. Humanity will be reviewed again in 50 cycles. Standard terms, standard restrictions, standard humiliation. The human woman stood. Her voice, when it came through the translation system, was calm. Ambassador Kalen, may I ask a question? Kalen inclined his head. He had expected questions. New species always had questions. You may. You mentioned that the Vorth have studied human history. Did your researchers note any anomalies in our development? The chamber went still. Not silent. There were always whispers and movements in a chamber of 400 species. But the attention sharpened. This wasn't the usual desperate plea for better terms. Kalen checked his data slate. Your species experienced what you call a technological singularity approximately 200 years ago. Your rate of advancement from industrial civilization to spaceflight was accelerated, beyond statistical norms for Class 12 worlds. The human woman nodded. And did your researchers note when that acceleration began? Kalen scrolled further. His eye stalks pulled back slightly. Approximately 2,000 years before your singularity, your development entered a sharp upward curve during what your records call the Industrial Revolution. And before that, your species remained at pre-industrial levels for nearly 200,000 years. Kalen looked up from the slate. This is not unusual. Many species experience long periods of stagnation before breakthrough. 200,000 years of stagnation, the woman said. Then an explosion of advancement that took us to the stars in a fraction of the normal time. Doesn't that seem strange to you? Kalen felt something crawl across his sensory membrane. He didn't know what the human was implying, but he suddenly wished he hadn't come to watch the newcomers beg. The woman smiled. It was not a kind smile. Ask your researchers to look deeper, Ambassador. Look at the structures we built before we had the technology to build them. Look at the mathematics we discovered before we had the science to discover them. Look at everything we forgot. She sat down. The council moved on to other business, but Kalen couldn't stop thinking about her words. That night, he sent a request to Vorth Central Archives. The request came back. Access DE&IED. Your clearance is insufficient. For the first time in 12,000 cycles, Ambassador Kalen felt afraid of a junior species. The UNSC Beagle had been searching for 7 months. Captain Myra Voss stood on the observation deck, watching the nebula swirl outside the viewport. The colors were wrong, deep crimsons and violets that shouldn't exist in normal space. Her science officer had explained it 3 times. Something about ionized particles and gravitational lensing, and a dozen other terms that meant nothing to a woman who had started her career flying cargo haulers between Mars and the Belt. What have we got, Lieutenant? Commander Hayes turned from the sensor array. His face looked pale under the red glow of the emergency lights. Captain, you need to see this. Voss crossed to the array. Hayes pointed at a signal reading, a spike in a frequency band that shouldn't exist. Not radio, not quantum entanglement, not anything in the human or galactic databases. What is it? I don't know, Hayes's voice shook. It's repeating. Same pattern every 40 seconds, and Captain, the pattern isn't random, it's structured, it's got syntax. Voss stared at the reading. A language. Either that or the most complex mathematical sequence I've ever seen. Hayes looked up at her. And I've been running the numbers. This sequence is older than anything I can calculate. The signal degradation suggests a transmission age of at least. He stopped. How old, Commander? 2 billion years, minimum. The observation deck went quiet. Voss could hear the hum of the life support systems, the distant clank of the fusion reactor, her own heartbeat in her ears. 2 billion years. The Earth hadn't even formed its current continents 2 billion years ago. Life had been single-celled organisms crawling through primordial sludge. Where's it coming from? Hayes pointed at the nebula's heart. Deep inside. There's something in there, something big. The sensors can't get a clear reading through all the ionization, but I'm picking up solid mass, artificial construction. Voss made a decision she would either be decorated or court-martialed for. Take us in. The Beagle pushed deeper into the nebula. The colors outside the viewport shifted, crimson to gold to a black so deep it seemed to swallow light. The ship shuddered as the nebula's gravity wells tugged at her hull. Voss kept her hand on the armrest of her command chair, counting seconds between tremors. 3 hours later. The sensors found it. An asteroid, not unusual in a nebula. What was unusual was the asteroid's shape, perfectly spherical, 20 kilometers in diameter, and wrapped around its equator, a band of metal that should have been impossible. Captain Hayes breathed. That band is a single piece of alloy, no seams, no welds, no construction joints. It's like someone poured it into place around the entire asteroid. Can we land? The asteroid's gravity is minimal. We can put a shuttle on the band's surface. Voss nodded. Suit up, I'm going with you. The landing was smooth, too smooth. Voss stepped out of the shuttle onto a surface that felt warm through the soles of her boots. The band stretched away in both directions, a perfectly flat roadway that curved with the asteroid's circumference. No dust, no debris, not a single scratch or mark of age. And yet 2 billion years. They found the entrance 100 meters from the landing site, a door, and there was no other word for it set flush into the band's surface. No handles, no locks, no obvious mechanism for opening. Hayes ran his scanner over the door. Captain, I'm getting energy readings. Something inside is still active. Can you open it? He touched the door. Nothing happened. He pressed harder, still nothing. Voss stepped forward. She didn't know why. Something about the door felt familiar. Not in a way she could explain, not memory or recognition, just a sense of rightness, like coming home after a long deployment. She placed her palm against the cold metal. The door opened. Light poured out, not harsh but welcoming, warm. Inside, a corridor stretched into the asteroid's heart, lined with symbols that Voss had never seen but somehow understood. Her name, her rank, her ship's designation, all written in a language that shouldn't exist. Captain, Hayes whispered, how did you do that? Voss looked at her hand, at the door, at the symbols that knew her name. I don't know, she said, but I think I'm about to find out. They walked into the corridor. Behind them, the door closed with a sound like a heartbeat. The corridor ended in a chamber that should have been dark but wasn't. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, from the walls, the ceiling, the floor, from the very air itself. It illuminated a space the size of a cathedral, filled with objects that Voss couldn't identify, machines that hummed with ancient power, displays that showed star maps in constant motion, and at the chamber's center, a single pedestal. On the pedestal rested a sphere, not metal, not crystal, something else entirely. It pulsed with a soft blue glow like a heart made of captured sky. Voss approached slowly. Hayes stayed by the door, his scanner making frantic chirping sounds. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures. This whole chamber is a power plant of some kind, and that sphere, he swallowed, that sphere could power a dozen star systems. Voss reached the pedestal. The sphere's glow intensified as she drew near. She felt warmth spreading through her chest, her arms, her fingers, not uncomfortable, familiar, like the warmth of a childhood home on a winter morning. She touched the sphere. The galaxy exploded inside her mind. Not literally, but Voss saw everything, the asteroid's true purpose, the nebula's origin, the history of a civilization that had ruled the galaxy before the first multicellular life crawled onto Earth's shores. They called themselves the Builders. They had spread across 1,000,000 worlds. They had bent physics to their will, created matter from energy, traveled between stars in the blink of an eye. And then they had vanished. But not before leaving behind their legacy. Not before seeding their knowledge into the genetic code of a single world, a single species, chosen to inherit everything when the time was right. Earth. Humanity. "We're not newcomers," Voss whispered. Her voice echoed in the chamber. "We're heirs." Hayes rushed to her side. "Captain, what are you talking about?" Voss pulled her hand from the sphere. The images faded, but the knowledge remained. She knew how to read the symbols on the walls now. She knew what every machine in the chamber did. She knew why the door had opened for her. "The builders," she said, "they were human. Not exactly human, not like us, but close, close enough. They engineered our ancestors, planted us on Earth, and then stepped back. Let us evolve naturally. Let us forget everything we had been." Forget? Hayes looked around the chamber with new eyes. Why would anyone want to forget? Voss turned to face him. Her eyes were wet. Because something was hunting them, something they couldn't defeat, couldn't negotiate with, couldn't escape. So they ran. They hid. They made themselves into something smaller, weaker, dumber, something that wouldn't register on the hunter's sensors. She pointed at the sphere, and now the hunters are coming back. The sphere pulsed faster. Alarms began to sound throughout the chamber, not audio alarms, but something deeper, something that vibrated in Voss's bones. The star maps on the walls were changing. Points of light were going dark along the galactic rim. "The hibernation is over," Voss said. "We're awake now." On the bridge of the Beagle, Communications Officer Ensign Park received 3 messages simultaneously. The first was from Earth Command, demanding to know why the Beagle had entered restricted space. The second was from the Galactic Council, threatening sanctions for unauthorized exploration. The third came from a frequency no human had ever used before. It was short, it was simple, and it was broadcast to every human ship within range of every builder site across the galaxy. "Awaken the fleet." Ambassador Kalen received the news during his morning meal. The Meridian Collective had filed a formal complaint. 2 of their survey vessels, operating near the border regions, had observed human ships converging on a previously uncharted asteroid field. The humans had ignored all hails. The humans had entered a structure that matched the descriptions of the Beagle findings. The humans had emerged with technology that made Meridian sensors go blind. Kalen set down his nutrient paste. "How many sites?" The aide consulted her data slate. "Confirmed, 14. Suspected, at least 30 more. The humans are moving faster than we anticipated. They seem to know where to look." "How?" "Their captain, the one from the Beagle, she downloaded something from the first site. A map, a key. We don't know. But every human ship that receives her transmission can suddenly find builder artifacts that we've been scanning over for centuries." Kalen's eye stalks curled inward. The gesture meant distress in Vorth physiology. "The Dominion." "The Xyler Dominion has called an emergency session of the Council's Security Committee. They're demanding immediate action." Kalen stood. "Get me a transport. I'm going to that session." The Security Committee chamber was smaller than the main council hall, but the tension inside it was 1,000 times heavier. Representatives from 53 species sat in concentric circles, their attention fixed on the central display. It showed a map of human space, 12 colonies, 3 billion people, a handful of warships that council military analysts had dismissed as obsolete. The Dominion's representative, a scarred being named General Thrax, pointed at the map with a clawed appendage. 72 hours ago, the humans had no military capability beyond their own borders. Now they have access to builder technology. We have no idea how much. We have no idea what it does. We have no idea how to stop it. A delegate from the Rellan technocracy raised a manipulator. "The builder artifacts have been dormant for 2 billion years. Perhaps the humans have activated nothing more than historical records, museums, not weapons." "Then explain this." Thrax gestured at the display. The map zoomed in on a sector near the human colony world of New Texas. The Dominion dispatched a reconnaissance fleet to observe human activities in the area. 3 destroyers, 1 cruiser, full military complement. Standard observation protocols, non-threatening stance. The display showed a tactical recording. The Dominion fleet, 4 ships in perfect formation approaching the New Texas system, then a flash of light, then nothing. "Where are the ships?" someone asked. Thrax's voice was flat. "Debris. We found debris scattered across 3 million kilometers of space. Thermal readings suggest the ships were destroyed within seconds of each other. We detected no weapons fire, no energy signatures, nothing." Kalen spoke before he realized he was going to. "What did the humans say when you confronted them?" The room turned to look at him. Thrax's eyes narrowed. The humans denied any involvement. They claimed their ships were still in orbit around New Texas, that they hadn't moved, that they hadn't fired a shot. And we verified their ships' positions. They were exactly where they said they were. Every human vessel accounted for, none of them within weapons range of our fleet. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Kalen felt the pieces clicking together in his mind. The human woman at the admission hearing, her question about anomalies, her smile. She had known. They had all known. They had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, while the galaxy laughed at their primitive ways. "We need to stop them," Thrax said. "Now, before they activate more sites, before they learn more about the Builder technology." "How?" The Rellan delegate spread his manipulators wide. "We don't know what they're capable of. We don't know where all the sites are. We don't even know if we can trust our own sensors anymore." "Then we take what we do know." Thrax turned to face Kalen. "Ambassador, your species has the most complete records of human history, their development patterns, their genetic markers, their military doctrines. We need everything you have." Kalen hesitated. He had requested those records from Central Archives. The request had been denied. But now, with the Security Committee watching, with the galaxy possibly on the edge of war, "I'll see what I can provide," he said. He didn't tell them about the denial. He didn't tell them about the strange unease that had been gnawing at him since the admission hearing. He didn't tell them that he had started having dreams of vast cities and impossible machines, and a voice that whispered in a language he shouldn't understand. He didn't tell them because he was afraid they would think he was going mad. But Kalen knew he wasn't mad. He knew something else, too, something that chilled him to the core of his being. The voice in his dreams sounded human. Commander Elias Thorne had never believed in destiny. He believed in physics. He believed in training. He believed in the cold mathematics of orbital mechanics and the hot reality of combat. Destiny was for poets and politicians. Thorne was a soldier. But when the ground beneath Mars opened and the warship emerged, he started to reconsider. The UNSC Vanguard had been buried under 40 meters of Martian rock for 2 billion years. Construction crews had found it by accident, digging a new habitat dome near the colony's industrial sector. At first, they thought it was a geological formation, too large for a ship, too regular for a cave. Then the excavation exposed hull plating that refused to corrode, refused to dent, refused to acknowledge that 2 billion years had passed. Thorne had been the senior military officer on Mars when the Beagle report came through. Earth Command had put him in charge of site security. He had watched as scientists and engineers tried and failed to penetrate the ship's outer hull. He had listened as they debated whether to drill, to cut, to blast their way inside. Then Captain Voss had arrived from the Beagle site with her downloaded knowledge. She had walked up to the hull, placed her palm against the metal, and whispered something in a language Thorne didn't recognize. The hull had opened like a flower. "Commander," Voss said, "meet your new command." The Vanguard was 3 kilometers long. Its internal volume was larger than the entire city of New York. Its drive systems used principles that human physicists had dismissed as impossible. Its weapons arrays could reach across a star system and turn planets into rubble. And it was designed to be crewed by a single person. Impossible, Thorn had said, standing on the bridge, a circular chamber with a single chair at its center. One person can't operate a ship this size. Voss had smiled that smile again, the one that made Thorn's skin crawl. You're not just one person, Commander, you're human. She had shown him the interface. A chair that connected directly to the nervous system. A computer that merged with the pilot's consciousness, expanding their awareness across the entire ship, making every weapon, every sensor, every system an extension of their own body. Pilots who use this interface report changes, Voss had warned. They remember things that aren't in their own memories, things from before. Before what? Before we forgot who we were. Thorn had sat in the chair 3 days ago. He hadn't gotten up since. Not because he couldn't, because he didn't want to. The memories were flooding in, not as images or sounds, but as knowledge, as understanding. He knew how the Vanguard worked because he had helped build it 2 billion years ago in a body that wasn't his own but still carried his soul. He knew about the hunters, too. They were coming. They had always been coming. The builders had fought them for 1,000 years, lost 1,000 worlds, watched 1,000 species go extinct before they finally admitted defeat. The only way to survive was to hide, to regress, to become something so small and insignificant that the hunters would look right past them. It had worked. For 2 billion years it had worked. The hunters had moved on, seeking prey elsewhere in the galaxy, leaving the builders' descendants to evolve in peace. But now the peace was ending. The hunters had noticed something, a signal, a disturbance, a whisper of ancient technology waking from its long sleep. They were turning around. Thorn opened his eyes. The Vanguard bridge materialized around him, real this time, not the mind interface simulation he had been inhabiting for the past 3 days. Voss stood by the chair, her face worried. Commander, you need to see this. He stood. His legs felt strange, too strong, too fast, too responsive. The interface had changed his body as well as his mind. He was more now, faster, stronger, more human than he had ever been. The main view screen showed a tactical display. Red icons marked Dominion fleet movements along the border of human space. Dozens of ships, hundreds. The Dominion was mobilizing for war. They've declared us a threat to galactic security, Voss said. The Council is debating military action. Thrax wants to destroy every builder site before we can activate more ships. Thorn looked at the red icons, at the ships that were coming to destroy his people, his worlds, his future. Activate the rest of the fleet, he said. We don't have enough pilots, the interface requires. They'll adapt. Thorn turned away from the display. We all adapted, we're human, it's what we do. He walked to the communications station and opened a channel to every human world, every human ship, every human with builder blood in their veins. This is Commander Elias Thorn of the UNSC Vanguard. The galaxy thinks we're weak. They think we're newcomers who don't know our place. They think they can take what's ours and destroy what we've built. He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was steel. Show them what we remember. Ambassador Kalen watched the council chamber descend into chaos. The emergency session had been called 3 hours ago. Every species with a military had sent representatives. Every species with a voice had used it to scream accusations, threats, and desperate pleas for restraint. The Dominion wanted immediate strikes on all known builder sites. The Meridians wanted diplomatic negotiations. The Rellan wanted to study the technology before anyone used it. And the humans had sent a message, short, simple, terrifying. We will defend what is ours. Do not test us. We cannot back down, General Thrax roared, his claws raking the air. If we show weakness now, the humans will consume us. They'll activate more ships. They'll spread to every builder world. They'll become. What? Kalen interrupted. What will they become, General? Thrax turned his scarred face toward the Vorth ambassador. They will become a threat to every species in this chamber. Is that what you want? What I want is to avoid a war we cannot win. The chamber erupted again. Thrax slammed his claws against his podium, demanding silence. Cannot win, the general's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. The Dominion has 8,000 battle cruisers. We have the largest military in galactic history. We have. You have nothing that can touch a builder warship. Kalen hadn't meant to say it, but once the words were out, he couldn't take them back. The chamber went quiet. Every eye turned to him. Thrax's mandibles twitched. Explain. Kalen pulled up his data slate. The information from Central Archives had finally arrived, not the full records he had requested, but enough to understand. The Builders were not just an advanced civilization. They were a weaponized civilization. Everything they built was designed for war. Their ships, their cities, even their genetic code. They were fighting something so terrible that they chose to forget their own existence rather than face it again. He looked at the display, at the red icons marking Dominion fleet positions, at the green icons marking human space. The humans haven't just inherited builder technology. They've inherited builder instincts, builder tactics, builder ruthlessness, and they've spent 2 billion years evolving in an environment that makes most death worlds look like gardens. Kalen turned to face Thrax directly. If you attack them, you will lose, not because they have better ships, though they probably do, not because they have better weapons, though we know they do. You will lose because they have spent their entire existence fighting gravity, fighting radiation, fighting predators, fighting each other. Fighting is what they are. The chamber was so quiet that Kalen could hear his own heartbeat. Thrax's voice was cold. You're afraid of them. Of course I'm afraid of them. Kalen spread his lower hands in the gesture of surrender. Any sane species would be afraid of them, but fear is not the same as wisdom. Wisdom is knowing when to fight and when to wait. And you think we should wait? I think we should watch, learn, understand what the humans are becoming before we decide whether they're enemies or something else. The doors to the council chamber opened. A human delegation walked in, not the same 5 from the admission hearing. These humans wore military uniforms. These humans carried weapons that glowed with builder energy. These humans were accompanied by machines that moved with a grace no council technology could match. The lead human was a woman with gray-streaked hair, Captain Myra Voss. She walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at the assembled delegates. Her eyes found Kalen, held his gaze. Ambassador, she said, thank you for your wisdom. Most of your colleagues lack it. Thrax stepped forward. You have no right to be here. This is a closed session. Voss turned to face him. General Thrax, you sent a fleet to destroy our colony. You threatened our species with extinction. You called us primitive, dangerous, unfit for membership in this council. She took a step closer. And now you're afraid because we proved you wrong. Thrax's claws twitched toward his weapon. The human machines moved. Not fast, just a subtle shift in stance, a repositioning of limbs. But the message was clear. If Thrax drew his weapon, he would die before it left its holster. The Dominion does not fear your kind, Thrax growled. Yes, you do, Voss smiled that smile, and you should. She raised a hand. On the view screen above the chamber, a new image appeared. A fleet of human ships, not the dozen that Council intelligence had reported, but hundreds, thousands. Builder warships emerging from asteroids, from moons, from the depths of gas giants. Ships that had been sleeping for eons, waiting for descendants to claim them. The Dominion has 8,000 battle cruisers, Voss said. We have 80,000, and ours are 2 billion years more advanced than yours. She let that sink in. We don't want war. We never wanted war. But we will defend ourselves. We will defend our worlds. And if anyone in this chamber thinks they can take what belongs to us by right of inheritance, She turned to face the council president, the ancient Jorlek being stared back with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Then we will show you why the builders chose us to carry their legacy. On the view screen, the human fleet began to move. The data cores revealed everything. Kalen sat in a private chamber aboard the UNSC Vanguard, surrounded by displays that showed information he had never imagined existed. Captain Voss had invited him here, a gesture of trust that made his sensory membrane itch with anxiety. Why would the humans show their secrets to a Vorth ambassador? Because they wanted him to understand. Because they needed someone to tell the galaxy what was coming. The builders called them the Extinction, Voss said, standing beside the main display. Not a species, not an empire, a force of nature. They don't negotiate, they don't communicate, they don't even seem to think the way we think. They just consume. The display showed a recording from 2 billion years ago, a galaxy much like the present one but with more stars, more worlds, more life. Then the darkness came. Not a physical darkness, a darkness of worlds going silent, species vanishing, entire sectors wiped clean of life. They spread from the galactic rim, Voss continued. Slow at first, then faster. The builders fought them for 1,000 years, developed weapons that could destroy stars, shields that could survive supernovas, ships that could travel between galaxies in days. She pointed at the display. The recording showed builder warships engaging the darkness, weapons fire so intense that the display had to dim to avoid blinding the viewers, ships the size of moons exploding in showers of debris. Nothing worked. Every victory was temporary. Every defense was eventually breached. The Extinction adapted faster than the builders could innovate. It learned. It evolved. It grew stronger with every world it consumed. Kalen felt sick, so the builders ran. They planned. Voss's voice was hard. They found a world at the edge of the galaxy, a small world with a yellow sun and a single moon. They engineered the atmosphere, the gravity, the entire ecosystem to support a very specific kind of life. Then they encoded their knowledge into the genetic structure of that life and let evolution take its course. Earth. They buried their weapons under the surface of every planet in the system. They hid their ships inside asteroids and moons. They built a network of failsafes that would activate when certain conditions were met, when their descendants reached a certain level of technology, when the Extinction began to stir again, when the galaxy needed them most. Voss touched the display. The image changed to show a map of the galaxy. Most of it was green, safe, populated, alive. But along the rim, a patch of red was spreading. The Extinction is waking up. Our sensors have confirmed it. Millions of ships moving toward the galactic core, toward us, toward every living thing in this galaxy. Kalen stared at the red patch, at the inexorable spread of death. How long? 5 years, maybe less. Voss turned to face him. That's why we've been activating the builder sites. That's why we've been building our fleet. That's why we let the Dominion threaten us instead of crushing them immediately. Let them threaten you. We needed time to wake the ships, time to train our people, time to prepare for what's coming. Voss's expression softened. The Dominion's fleet is nothing compared to the Extinction, a skirmish, a distraction. We couldn't afford to waste our strength on them. Kalen felt his perspective shift. All the fear, the anger, the suspicion, it had been based on a false premise. The humans weren't conquering, they were preparing. Why are you telling me this? Because we can't fight alone. Voss gestured at the display. 80,000 ships, 3 billion people, one species, against something that consumed a civilization that spanned 1 million worlds. She met Kalen's eyes. We need allies, we need soldiers, we need every ship, every weapon, every living being in this galaxy to stand together, or we all die. Kalen thought about the Council, about the Dominion, about all the species who had laughed at humanity, dismissed them, treated them like children playing with stones. They won't believe me. Make them believe. Voss handed him a data crystal. This contains everything: the history of the builders, the threat of the extinction, the location of every remaining builder armory in the galaxy. If the Council wants to survive, they'll need those weapons. They'll need our help. She paused. And they'll need to stop laughing. Kalen took the crystal. It felt heavy in his grasp, heavy with the weight of 2 billion years of secrets. What will you do? Voss looked at the display, at the red patch spreading along the galactic rim. We're going to meet them, slow them down, buy you time to unite the galaxy. She smiled, not the terrifying smile from the council chamber, but something softer, something almost sad. That's what the builders built us for. That's why we forgot our past, because when the time came to remember. She touched the display. The human fleet appeared, 80,000 ships, arranged in battle formations that Kalen didn't recognize but somehow understood. They were defensive formations, waiting formations, formations designed to delay, to distract, to die. We would be ready to fight. Commander Elias Thorne stood on the bridge of the UNSC Vanguard and watched the extinction arrive. They came through a rift in space, not a wormhole, not a jump point, but something else. Something that tore the fabric of reality like claws through silk. Millions of ships poured through the opening, their shapes wrong in ways that hurt to look at. Not designed, not constructed, grown, like tumors in the flesh of the galaxy. Status, Thorne said. The Vanguard answered through his neural link. 3,000 allied ships, Dominion, Meridian, Relin, and a dozen others, had joined the human fleet in the past 4 years. Kalen had done his work well. The Council had finally stopped laughing. They had seen the red patch. They had verified the data. They had come, reluctantly, fearfully, to stand beside the species they had mocked. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough, but it was everything they had. All ships report ready, Voss said from the tactical station. She had refused to leave the Vanguard, even though Thorne had offered her command of her own vessel. Kalen sends his regards. He's with the Council fleet, coordinating communications. Thorne nodded. Tell him thank you for believing us. He says thank you for giving him something to believe in. The extinction ships were spreading now, moving away from the rift, seeking worlds to consume. They would find human space first. New Texas, Mars, Earth, 3 billion people who had only just remembered who they were. Thorne opened a channel to every ship in the Allied fleet. This is Commander Thorne. Some of you are here because you believe in us. Some because you believe in survival. Some because you had nowhere else to go. He paused. The extinction ships grew larger on the view screen. It doesn't matter why you're here. What matters is what we do now. The builders fought this enemy for 1,000 years and lost, but the builders weren't us. They didn't grow up on a world that tried to kill them every single day. They didn't evolve from predators who hunted in packs. They didn't learn to survive by being smarter, faster, tougher, meaner than everything around them. Thorne felt the Vanguard hum through his bones, felt the 80,000 human ships behind him, felt the 3,000 allied vessels beside him. The builders were brilliant, they were powerful, they were everything we hoped to become, but they made one mistake. They tried to fight the extinction with technology, with weapons, with shields and ships and all the clever things they could build. He leaned forward in his command chair. We're going to fight with something else. We're going to fight with our teeth, our claws, our hearts. We're going to fight like humans, dirty, desperate, and absolutely unwilling to die. The channel crackled with responses. Human cheers, alien war cries, the sound of a galaxy finally united against a common enemy. Captain Voss turned from her station. Commander, the extinction ships are entering weapons range. Hold fire. Hold fire, there are millions of them. I know, Thorne stood, but they don't know us yet. They've fought builders before. They've fought technology and tactics and all the things that make sense. They've never fought humans. He walked to the view screen. The extinction filled it now, a wall of wrongness that blotted out the stars. Open a channel to their flagship, if they have a flagship, if they have anything that can receive a transmission. Voss hesitated, then she nodded, channel open. Thorne looked into the darkness, into the face of an enemy that had consumed galaxies, extinguished civilizations, ended more lives than there were stars in the sky. "You don't know us," he said. "You've never met anyone like us. We're the species that looked at a world that wanted us dead and decided to live there anyway. We're the species that looked at each other and decided to fight and love and build and destroy and rebuild. We're the species that forgot everything we were so we could become something new." He smiled, not the terrifying smile from the council chamber, not the sad smile from the data core revelation. Something else, something ancient and dangerous and utterly, completely human. And now we remember. The extinction ship stopped moving. For a moment, just a moment, the darkness hesitated. Then Thorne gave the order. "All ships attack pattern human, maximum aggression, no retreat, no surrender." He sat back in his chair and felt the vanguard surge forward, felt 80,000 human ships surge with it, felt 3,000 allied vessels follow in their wake. "Today," he said, "we remind the universe why the builders chose us." The first shots were fired. The first ships exploded. The first wave of the extinction crashed against the human fleet and found, for the first time in 2 billion years, something that pushed back. Commander Elias Thorne watched the battle begin. And for the first time since he had sat in the Vanguard's chair, he wasn't afraid. He was human.